Hi, my name's Lorene. Welcome to Books at the Bottom of the Stairs. That was Taz. He's been lurking for the last 30 minutes trying to convince me to sit down somewhere and pay attention. But now that I can sit down, I thought this would make like a great, cameo appearance for Taz, but he's decided he's not interested. Well, I hope you're all doing well. January, getting to the end of January. I have two books to talk to you about that surprisingly are about death. And I say surprisingly because this is from a group of books that I'm pulling from a list that's, like from 2018, 2019. So I don't remember anymore why they are on the list, but as I've said before, if it's on the list, trust it. And so these two books I'm speaking to you about today are What to Say Next, and that is by Julie Buxbaum, who also wrote Tell Me Three Things, and Dead Fathers Club by Matt Haig. And they're really very interesting. I think as a couple, they're quite interesting as a couple. I don't think that I planned that. I think they just happened to come in from the library, at the same time. And I really didn't know what either one was about. I hadn't rechecked their blurbs or anything. I just put the holds on. So What to Say Next is a YA novel, and it is about a young girl whose dad has just died in a car crash. And let me see, what's her name? Kit. And her sort of solution to the stress of returning to high school with this trauma is to spend time with a classmate that she's never spent any real significant time with, David, who, as they say today, is neurotypical, which in not so recent past would have been high functioning autism. So David has isolated himself, or has been isolated by virtue of his issues. He wears headphones, he's got long hair, he's just very much insular. Kit, on the other hand, is a fairly popular girl. Her friends are very interested in the parties and the clothes and the makeup and that kind of typical high school things. She is finding all of these preoccupations to be just too much with respect to the trauma that she's experienced. Her dad really died a difficult death in a car crash, and she's traumatized by this and trying to deal with grief. Now, one of my issues around grief in teen books is that it's all supposed to somehow be resolved in 4 weeks, and I just think, no, I can't really see that. Yeah, I mean, the adults around are trying to be understanding, but other teens and so forth, life just goes on, and so there's not that real sense of loss for friends, even though they might come over to visit and play video games with you. They're not really going to notice that mom or dad is gone because mom and dad are never usually there at 4:30 or whatever, they're at work. So they don't have that sense of the depth of the loss of a parent. So to resolve that in 4 weeks or 6 weeks, it just doesn't, like, the expectations are inappropriate, but the teens aren't going to get that because it's the first time that someone in their group has experienced a loss. So there's just kind of this really weird callousness that takes place, even though friends are trying very hard to be supportive and make things normal and so on. So this is what Kit is experiencing, but she feels that by hanging around with David, he's not nonverbal, he just can't be bothered. So he's just a breath of refreshment. Plus, he also doesn't have any subterfuge. So your dad is dead is a sort of comment that he might make, as opposed to, gee, I'm really sorry you're going through a hard time. So she finds his straight on approach to be very refreshing, and she just loves the honesty about them. And what is also going on is that David is slowly growing to be more socially interested, in the sense that he doesn't have any friends, and Kit showing up at his table is an opportunity for him to explore what that's like to have someone who might be a friend. So he's willing to make some changes in his behavior and his appearance to nurture that friendship. And he's also willing to listen to Kit's questioning of, why is her dad dead, and what is the afterlife like, and so on. And he's very matter of fact. He doesn't have a terrific imagination, and so sometimes his flat-footedness, shall we say, can be hurtful. But on the other hand, Kit realizes that he's being as honest as he knows how. So eventually they just kind of navigate their way through this field mine of people trying to, he's just not going to be that, what's that word, candy-coated about things, and so every once in a while a landmine explodes for Kit because he's just said something bald-faced truth, and it's like that's hurtful too in a different kind of a way. So the other part that Kit's trying to figure out is, was there a moment when someone could have accelerated or put on the brakes in that accident that would have saved her father's life? And so this is a very fascinating problem for David, because he figures, physics can sort this all out. And she is unable to go to the corner where the accident happened and help him measure it out and discuss what was the rain like, what was the humidity like, what was the surrounding traffic like. Those kinds of questions are she just not capable of dealing with at all. And he figures out the physics of the crash, and in fact comes away with a conclusion that opens up a whole Pandora's box of new pain and new, new crisis for Kit and Kit's mom, who has been trying to protect Kit from a whole bunch of different things that Kit has blocked out. So there's a very interesting twist at the end. And what I like about this book is this sort of black and whiteness of discussing what is death, what for anybody, whether it's a young person or an elderly person, someone who's been seriously ill versus a sudden death. There's just quite a lot of exploration about these things, and I find that really intriguing, given that so much of society we can't even say so-and-so died, we say so-and-so passed. And I think, well, that just sounds like they had bad gas, but that's me. And so I tend to just hang on to the word dead, because I think the more we use that word in our language, the more we're able to confront what is inevitable for all of us in some fashion. So this book does this in a way that includes sort of the cruelty of kindness, the kindness of cruelty. It's very interesting. I really recommend this one. And David, as a neurotypical young man, is quite fascinating too, because I think we make an assumption around people who have these different kinds of problems, whether they're physical or neurological or what have you, that somehow they're not able to be fully fleshed people. And I mean, that's just so not true. If you can find someone who can deal with you on your own level, then it's entirely possible to have relationships and future relationships and so on. So he brings quite a nice brave face to the conversation around kids with these kinds of issues. Adults, really. I mean, he's almost a full man at this point. But okay, the second one was kind of a surprise to me also. It's Matt Haig, and he wrote the 3 books that we read over Christmas for the last few years. The oh my gosh, the ones about Father Christmas and Someone Saves Christmas, and The Boy Who Invented Christmas. Thank you. Girl Who Saved Christmas. Remember the last one? No. Anyhow, I thought Matt Haig, okay, this should be fun. And the Dead Fathers Club, and also given the graphic on the front of the book cover, I thought, okay, that sounds like a really fun middle reader. So I thought, yeah, okay, Dad's going to be dead, and it says in here that it's a ghost story, and Dad's ghost has appeared to Philip. So I thought, oh, okay, this can be a really interesting way that this boy is going to process the trauma of Dad's death, and Dad's going to keep showing up. And I was just kind of expecting something along a Richard Scrimgeour kind of a book where the boy's imagination is taking over, and the ghost is comforting the young boy until he feels ready to deal with things. Well, that's kind of what starts out, and in the beginning the language is fairly, or the text and the sentence structure and so on is fairly normal, and then as we progress in Philip's trauma, because the ghost is re-traumatizing Philip, the language becomes more, what shall I say, more fluid. There's less and less punctuation as you go by. Certain words start to become capitalized that are random. I sort of tried to figure out whether there was a pattern in the words that were bigger or in full text than others, but not necessarily. And then as we get towards the end, there's changes in font. There's changes in font size. And then by the end of it, there's almost no punctuation at all. So it can be a bit of a challenge to figure out who's speaking, because there is still punctuation around the dialogue. So thankfully that wasn't too hard to follow through. So this is not a book for kids. This is definitely an adult book. I think primarily because of the way the what do you call it? The sort of the graphic design of the language changes over the course of the book, and the intensity of Philip's dad's ghost becomes. He's more and more anxious. He's more and more angry. He's really got more and more conditions that he needs Philip to fulfill. Is this ghost powerful enough that he's actually affecting things like the wind or the birds in Philip's real life, so that it might be serendipity that a plastic bag comes up and somehow leads Philip to a place of refuge from bullies who are chasing him? Or was that just a plastic bag who happened to be going ahead of him? So there's this kind of, from the reader's point of view, is what's really a ghost, what's really a ghost's power happening, what's Philip's imagination, and what's just, a very convenient plastic bag. So it's really quite a lot of work to continue through the story and figure out just how much of the ghost is the ghost speaking, and where Philip's voice is part of the ghost, and because at a certain point we're not so sure that the ghost is a figment of Philip's imagination. The other side of the story is that Philip's mom is now responsible for a pub, and the Castle pub, and it's more in debt than she realized, and she's turning to her brother-in-law, who is a bit of a piece of work. Philip is not convinced that his uncle is there out of true affection for his mom, or whether it's an opportunistic grab of the pub. And so there's all kinds of things around the two adults' relationship that are deeply distressing to Philip, and they keep re-traumatizing him as well. So his trauma is quite a bit different than Kit's trauma in terms of what's the source point. Well, no, so that doesn't make sense. Dad's dead in both stories, but Kit has quite a very interesting reason for the trauma, and that we don't know, whereas for Philip the trauma is solely and entirely that Dad is dead, and the adults are not really listening to him, and they're not really letting him grieve in a way that he needs to grieve. He's really struggling. This is a bit of a mental breakdown that we're witnessing, and the parents, or the mom and the uncle, are definitely more on their own needs trajectory than they are thinking about what Philip might need. There's a teacher in there who's fairly compassionate given the restrictions of what a teacher can do. She tries to do some counseling with him because it's not available for him to go to any kind of external counseling, but she's pretty much out of her depth. I think she maybe help with other family issues, but death of a parent is not her strong suit. So she's working hard on things as well. So there's some friends involved, and there is another parent. He makes friends with Leah, and she has a very interesting father who's just, a little bit shimmering just above the normal line. And so that family has its own catastrophes, which somehow intertwine with Philip and his families. And it's just a very heavily knit book. And there's quite a lot of pondering points. It's not a quiet book. I was tense quite a bit through a lot of it. So Matt Haig certainly knows how to build his characters and build his atmosphere and create a dense, what would you say, like just dense, I'm on a diet and they call it calorie dense. This is a really calorie dense book. And so you're going to really, be quite full when you finish reading this book. All right, that's it for me. I don't have too much else to say. I'm still working on my January pile. And I guess that's it. I hope all your reading dreams and adventures continue to come true. And I'll see you soon. Bye-bye for now.